Well, hello, this is Vincent Green, and we're going to continue our study of Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. We have been looking at the days of creation, and we last time began to look at days 1, 2, and 3, and we focused on that God spoke light into existence, and there was darkness already over the surface of the earth, over the surface of the ground, and the water was on top of that, and darkness was displayed. And so God speaks light into existence, and when the light shines, it dispels the darkness. There's a separation from light and darkness. He doesn't get rid of all the darkness. That would happen in the new heavens and the new earth, where there's only going to be light, no darkness at all. But in this physical world, there is a difference between the day and the night, as God will call those two. He'll call the light day, and the darkness he calls night. And so we saw day 1, and then in day 2, God separates the waters from under that remain on the planet, that remain on the globe, separates them, and has water lifted up, and there's like a canopy now around the entire sphere that would remain until Noah's flood. But the separation between the two, that area is the atmosphere as you and I know it. It's breathable air. And then on day 3, you have dry land appearing. So the waters that are on the ground begin to move, relocate, so that you have a bodies of water and you have dry land appearing. And then God brings vegetation into existence. All kinds of seed-bearing trees in vegetation, all of that, it comes to appear. And when you look at days 1, 2, and 3, what you see is that when it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, that the earth was formless, well, now it's not formless anymore. God has brought the shape that is needed for the second part of the process, which would be days 4, 5, and 6. Now he's going to alleviate the problem of emptiness. Now he's going to bring population into the planet. He's going to populate the planet with creatures and with us. And so as we look at days 4, 5, and 6, we're gonna see that. One of the things I want to say before we begin to look at days 4, 5, and 6 is that you can find in these days of creation, which I told you are literal 24-hour days, there's like a pattern. You'll detect the pattern of the way the wording is. Even though on each day there's something distinct being created, there is a pattern. So it's you hear then God said, so we call that the creative word. And then the report of the effects of that creative word. He speaks something into existence, and it takes place. There's a report about that. Or it says it was so, that happened. And then there could be the statement, God's evaluation of that being good. And we've talked about the word good already. And then God may name something, like he called the light day and the darkness night. He called the waters that gathered into one place seas. So you could have sometimes in this the naming of these things by God already. And then you have the numbering of each day with that phrase, the evening passed and the morning came, marking whatever 24-hour period there was. And like I've said before, the reason that you have the 24-hour period, the reason you have that designation is because this is how God is setting a precedent. He's setting a pattern. God could have created everything just like that. He didn't have to take 7 days or 6 days to create. But he had a pattern, and there's a reason for that. And once we get to chapter 2, verse 1 to 3, we're going to see that you had 6 days of creation, 6 24-hour days, and then there's a seventh day. And that pattern will represent something for the nation of Israel moving forward. These are literal 24-hour days. What God says here, he does. There's no doubt about it. There's no denying it. There are many people who would want to deny the accuracy of Genesis chapter 1, or even the Genesis itself. They would want to deny the wording of it. They would think that this is not truth. We need to follow modern day science, and the earth is billions and billions of years old, and it came by evolution and all this stuff, and it actually is just so far-fetched, it's unbelievable. The plain, simple reading of the scriptures provide the truth that we need to know. Okay? They may think, the world's going to think that you're gullible, that you're non-scientific, and that you're just loony and crazy for believing the wording of Genesis, but the way it just, trust me. Well, don't trust me, trust the Lord. This is what God did. You got to believe the Bible from cover to cover. If you say that the Bible is not inerrant and infallible at one point, well, it's all or nothing. And so scholars, even those who call themselves evangelical scholars, have done hermeneutical and gymnastics to try to deny the veracity and just the plain meaning of the text. And I haven't spent time going through all of that because you don't need that. What I want to do is present to you the scriptures as they are recorded. And you take the plain meaning of the text. You go back and look at the Hebrew of it. It's pretty plain, it's pretty obvious, it's pretty direct. And it comes over in translations very easily. So let's take a look at day 4, 5, and we're going to begin to look at day 6. And then we'll continue next time, and you'll know what I mean by that when we get there. So let's start with day 4. So day 4 is starting at verse 14, going all the way down to verse 19. Then God said, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be for signs to mark the seasons, to mark the days, to mark the years. Let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth." That is what happened. God made 2 great lights, the larger one to govern the day and the smaller one to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. Evening passed, morning came, marking the 4th day. So here you have the day in day 4, where you have the appearance of the sun, the moon, and the stars in the heavens. So this is a big day, isn't it? I mean, every day is a big day. But it says, just let lights appear, and boom, they just start showing up. And if you do study any kind of astronomy, it's like, wow, look at the vastness. And they calculated how many light years. We talked about light years, how many light years it would take to travel from here to Mars and to other planets. And what about other galaxies? What about everything else? I mean, you just imagine it all. But God created it, and he put all of that in place. And some would say, well, either they're created at that moment or they were previously created and now they're just appearing, because it says, let lights appear. But I go with the first option. I think God just, when it says appear, it just appeared. It just boom. So it's literally being created as at that moment. And you can see here that there's a definite reason. There's a purpose for God bringing in the sun, the moon, the stars. It says it's to let them be signs to mark seasons and days and years. Why? Because that's how this creation that God has made is going to function. It's going to have time. It's going to be based on time. So seasons of the years, days and the years. And notice the word day is the same word that shows up for the first day, second day, third day, and years. So there's a distinction between days and years. They're not the same. So if you want to make first day, second day, well, that's millions and millions of years. No, I mean, you can't say that because it wouldn't make sense. It's just a normal, plain reading of Scripture. So they had a clear purpose. The essence of time begins with the establishment of the sun, the moon, and the stars. The earth is now is rotating. I'm assuming that it was rotating from the beginning, and but I don't know. But it's definitely now because all of this is coming into place. And so you have everything that we know about the rotation of the earth and the way the earth is pointed on its axis. All of that is totally in line with what God did. God set it up that way, and he makes these lights appear so that in the sky and these stars that are far distant, and I've been to planetariums where they show the sky and they show where all these stars are located. You can just look up. I mean, I could see Abraham years from now, years from this time, looking up at the sky and seeing how stars of the heavens and how there's multitude of them like sands on the seashore. That this shows God's handiwork. And even though we live in a world populated by unbelievers who don't believe in Genesis, don't believe the gospel, don't believe the Bible, and some will use stars and planets as omens and use it for superstitious guidance, that's not the purpose of the stars. The purpose of the stars, as David would say in Psalm 19, shows God's handiwork. It points back to the glory of God, points back to who God is. And so God designed them to have that functionality. And then he says in verse 15, let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth. And that is what happened. And so God made these lights appear. He made these lights appear. When you go to Romans chapter 1, verse 25, it talks about how the world takes created idols out of things that were created. And it says they traded the truth about God for a lie. They worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself. And so they worshiped the stars, and they created idols out of all that, and Greek gods and goddesses out of the whole thing. And so mankind lost in sin, as we will learn about in chapter 3, doesn't see just the trueness of that God brought all these physical things into existence. Like I said, they're used to designate times of the year. To give you a couple of references on that, Genesis 17, verse 21. But my covenant will be confirmed with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. So that would be understandable by Abraham, because next year, okay, another 300 and so many days. They had their understanding of time. It works for us because that's how God set it up. That's how he designed it. In chapter 18, verse 14, the next chapter, is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. See how that works? I mean, it's just obvious that God creates time. He brings it into existence, and the stars and the seasons, they can tell based on the alignment of how the stars are and where you're at. You can know what season of the year it is, what time of the day it is. All of these things are you can map it based on the stars and based on the position of them that God put into the heavens. Interestingly enough, think about this. He says this in Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 7. Even the stork that flies across the sky knows the time of her migration, as do the turtle dove, the swallow, and the crane. They all return at the proper time each year. But it's interesting, they the stork and the turtle dove and the swallow, they follow that instinctive pattern, and they do that which they were created to do. But not my people, they do not know the Lord's laws. They're violating, they're living in disobedience to God because of sin. It's an interesting analogy. So you have these designated times of the year. Now, as you get to verse 16, it says, God made two great lights, larger one to govern the day, the smaller one to govern the night. And he also made the stars. So this is where we get the larger light. That's the sun. The smaller one is our moon. And so you have the earth rotating every 24 hours, right? It's rotating. So it's rotating on its axis. It's rotating around the sun over the course of a year. And then the moon rotates around the earth as well. And so you have all of these things happening, these motions, and are happening all at the same time. And God established that. He put that into place. And so, interestingly, you have day one being light, day 3 being stars and the sun. And the sun is now, it's like maybe the light capsulate into the sun. The sun is huge. You can do a study on that. Go to the Wikipedia and type SUN, and you can see, and you can Google that, see the dimensions of it and all that they've been able to figure out. And it's just huge. It's just massive, and it's a large amount of heat. And so that God put that into existence. And so you have these, you say, now, wait a minute, how does the smaller one govern the night? How does it rule over the night? It's in that it functions. It's like the moon is like a reflector. It reflects the sun's rays. It's not a light source, but it's like a reflector. And so as the moon reflects the light to still shine during the nighttime and kind of brighten up so you can still see it, even though you have that in our creation, even though the moon is there, it's like God is the source of the light, and we are his divine reflectors in terms of that metaphorical use of it, or light is good, darkness is evil. And so there you see these patterns like that set up. And then and he also made the stars. And then God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and the night, to separate light from the darkness. And God saw that it was all good. So you have this, God placed all the stars where they needed to be. He placed the sun and the moon and the earth right where it needed to be. And it's all hanging on nothing, right? How could that just be evolution? It's too intricate. It's too complex. And it's just simply stated for us. That's the truth we need to know. How God did it, I have no idea. But did he do it? Yes. So now we have God set these lights. And it's all to light the earth. He's positioning everything so that the earth is ready for what he wants to do with it. So that's day 4. Now we go to day 5. We meet the fish and the birds. God says, let the waters swarm with fish and other life. Let the waters swarm with fish and other life, and let the skies be filled with birds of every kind. So you see the population that's taking place. The universe was now populated with stars and the sun and the moon. Now the earth is going to be populated with fish, water life, aquatic life. And then birds are going to fly in the heavens, in the sky, in that atmosphere. And in day 5, it says, in verse 21, so God created great sea creatures. This is the next occurrence of the word bara. So God brings these great sea creatures and every living thing that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird. He brings them all into existence. They're not formed from existing material. He just, boom, speaks and it happens. So you got water life here, all sorts of fish, water creatures. You have the birds of the air, all sorts of birds, all sorts of flying creatures. And notice here, it says each producing offspring. Each producing offspring of the same kind. They're able to produce offspring. They're able to reproduce themselves. You know what this does? Just that one statement alone? It eliminates evolution at every level. You see, evolution, the premise of evolution is that you have one being that transitions into another being, and that transitions into another, and it transitions into another. There's always these series of transitions. Here's the problem. We never found the transitions. They don't know they can't find the transitions. But they keep asserting it. They keep asserting that the transitions exist. They just can't find them. But the plain evidence of God's creation is there every day. Right? I mean, you can look out in the starry skies and you can see his creation. Well, as long as the clouds are not there to block it. Normally you can see the stars and you feel the heat from the sun and you know that God is working. You look at his creation, there has to be a God. And this is the record of it, the simple record of it. It's not made up, it's not a myth, it's not a fable. And so each fish, each creature in the sea, all the birds, everything flying, they're able to reproduce after their own kind. And God saw that it was good. And so they're given a specific purpose by the Lord. He says, be fruitful and multiply. God blesses them, blesses the animals, and he says, be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, let the birds multiply on the earth. Just let them multiply. Let them repopulate and produce offspring. When you look at the phrase "be fruitful and multiply," it becomes like a regular formula of blessing. A regular formula of blessing. Genesis 24:60, Genesis 35:11, Genesis 48:4, Psalm 128, verse 3 and 4. This becomes a designation for that, and don't worry about writing those down. I'm updating the folder that has if you click the link and it takes you to all of the items, all of the pictures and everything that you need to see. I'm updating that link, and so you should be able to see a lot more notes now after watching this video. So everything should be there so you can see it. I try to write everything out neat. I do write in pencil, by the way, so I can erase if I make a mistake. But I'm trying to write this up so that you may have to click the picture and blow it up and look at it, but that'll give you an idea of all the different notes that I'm looking at. So there's a purpose. And one other passage though, Psalm 104, and then we're going to go to day 6. Psalm 104, verse 25. It says, here is the ocean, vast and wide, teeming with life of every kind, both large and small. And there's more to that psalm, but notice verse 27. They all depend on you to give them food as they need it. When you supply it, they gather it. You open your hand to feed them, and they are richly satisfied. And so just more about God's creation. And so you see that God creates, he has a plan, he's following that plan, and so now he's populating the earth with all fish and with water life and flying birds and flying creatures and everything in the air. So that's how everything comes into existence like that. Well, then we get to day 6. Day 6. And we're going to look at just verse 24 and 25 because we're going to start with verse 26 next time. That is creation of human beings, and we want to understand all of that. And so I'm saving that to begin next time. But look at verse 24 and 25. Here we have all the animals. And as there's different kinds of birds and fish, there's different kinds of animals. It says in verse 24, God says, let the earth produce every sort of animal, every sort, all kinds. That's just like a general heading here in this text, each producing offspring of the same kind. So very similar language for the birds and the fish. Notice the different classifications. There's livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals. So livestock would be animals that dwell with mankind. As we're going to see, mankind is created on the same day. So animals that dwell with mankind, especially those that would help bear burdens and be those who would, carry things, as you will see that. So God made like livestock, cattle, for that. There's small animals. This is different from the livestock. These scurry along the ground. And so it's the idea of scurry this is in contrast to human beings that walk on 2 feet. Then you have animals on 4 feet, right? And then you have some that just really are low to the ground, scurrying along the ground. And so it denotes the lower to the ground movement as opposed to man. Same Psalm 104 that I was in, verse 20. You send the darkness and it becomes night when all the forest animals prowl about. And so we walk, they prowl. There's difference of understanding. And so God makes all these animals. I mean, that's just the point of it. He makes all these animals. The third grouping here is wild animals. Those who live in the wild, and those who are not domesticated, those who are not really designed to help people. And then especially after sin enters the world, these wild animals will prey on each other. And, sin entering the world changes everything. It affects God's creation. And God will tell us about all that when we get to chapter 3. We'll see what the text says. So we have days 4, 5, and part of day 6. So you have all of these animals, and it says that's what's happened. God made all the sorts of wild animals, the livestock, the small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And then God saw that it was good. So the world's being populated. The earth is being populated, but there's still one more aspect of God's creation, and that's the crowning achievement of it. He'll say in verse 26, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. Human beings, that's you and I. What does it mean that he says, let us do that? Who is the us? Or who are the us? Who's the us? What does it mean to be created in God's image? What's that? To be like him. To be like us. What does that mean? That's what we're going to look at next time. It's going to be a fascinating study. Very important. And so in our next session, we're going to look at the meaning of those statements there. We're going to go into verse 27. And so the first part of 26 and then verse 27, focus on that. And then we'll continue on after that. So we're going to keep making our way through the book of Genesis. And so as you read the scriptures, I would encourage you to, as you're watching these sessions, especially if you're watching them every time that you can and have a plan to do that, read the passage, read the text. I put a link in the YouTube description for each video where you can read it in the translation that I'm using. You can get access to that free online. And so the New Living Translation. I did put a link there. I keep putting that link in there, which shows how, if you want to get access to the type of Bible that I'm using. It's a loose leaf Bible, 8.5 by 11 sheets. There's plenty of room to write, and you'll see the pictures of my notes. But that's not free. I had to purchase that, and it's not cheap. It does cost. But if you wanted your Bible to be like that, there is a King James version in that same format and a New International version. There's no New American Standard or ESV in that version. But anyway, that I know of, there is different versions of the Bible, or different, like ESV has one. It's real thick, and it's one page text, another page blank sheet. So those are big, thick Bible type Bibles that exist. But I like this approach because I can make my own notes and put them in a binder and keep them that way. It works out very, very well. So next time we will be looking at what does it mean for God to create humanity, and how did all that work. And so that'll be our topic for next time as we continue our study in the book of Genesis. Let's pray. Dear God, we do thank you again that we can come again at your word, come again to look at your word, and be able to progress through just this opening chapter of Genesis. And Lord, just through the creation account, we see more and more that you are sovereign, that you are Lord, and that you placed all of this at the proper time and in the proper way. And you kept saying, it's good, it's good, it's good. And Lord, it's just great to see your truth. And we put our faith in your truth. We put our faith in you. And Lord, one day we're going to be with you in the new heavens and the new earth. What an adventure that will be, to see you create a new heavens and a new earth just for us, and just for you to dwell, for us to dwell with you. And Lord, it's the beauty of all that. Lord, we give you thanks in all things. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thanks for watching. Continue to tell others about the series and about the study. And so we'll see you next time.